Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's so wonderful to be with everyone here on the Wednesdays with Wolbes. I want to also just wish a congratulations to Zehava and I on the 19th anniversary of our first date.
Oh,
Oh, nice. Happy anniversary.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll make the l'chaim after. Uh,
You said
but
that and you froze.
I said we'll make our l'chaim after.
Are we frozen?
Are we good? Do you see
Yeah,
us?
now
Everything's
you're
okay?
good.
Okay, good.
Hi,
Okay, excellent.
Elisa.
So
Hi.
last week we spoke about tahara, which means concentration, not having distractions, being focused, being grounded. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the next step yes, the next step in our growth, and that is to it's not only is to have a teacher that we can learn from their ways. Okay, the words that the Mishnah uses is bishimush chachamim, is to serve the wise. And what it means by serving the wise is wisdom is a very powerful tool, right? But wisdom doesn't make you great. Seeing the actions of the righteous, that's what makes you great. Okay, so in our pursuit of greatness, what we're trying to do is not just learn wisdom and educate ourselves. That's great, but that doesn't make greatness. Greatness is when you see the ways of the righteous and you learn from the ways and how they conduct their lives. That is what makes a person great.
I was just looking at my WhatsApp chat on the Houston community chat, and everyone's talking about school and when school restarting and is it starting and what's it going to be like and online. And I think we all, parents who tried to do the Zoom and all the online and phone classes and all that, learned that it's the learning over internet or reading or doing it on your own or homeschooling is not the same as in-person learning from a teacher and the environment. And I think that that's similar to what maybe that you're saying, is that you could homeschool yourself and there's a lot to learn. You could read stuff online, you could read books, you could learn from Jewish books, but when you see it in person and when you're in that environment and you have that teacher, that rabbi, someone wise that you could actually watch and observe and learn from, it's a much better learning opportunity.
Right. So I just the greatest story of this is my grandfather had one of his goals in life was to write 30 books. He wanted to write 15 books about righteous Torah scholars, and he wanted to write 15 books about the most prominent philosophers. And he wanted to contrast the greatness of a Torah scholar, where it's not just wisdom, it's the way they live their lives, to someone who thinks great thoughts, is a great philosopher, has unbelievable ideas, but the way in which they live their lives is very uh, uh, not complimentary. It's not a fulfilling, enriched, holy life. The greatest example of that was Aristotle. Aristotle was one of the greatest philosophers ever, but he lived one of the most promiscuous lifestyles ever. And his students once caught him in a very compromising situation with another woman. And his students asked him, "You're the great Aristotle. How is it possible that you're behaving like this?" And he said, "Well, now I'm not Aristotle. Now I'm just me." That doesn't work in Torah. Right? You can't be a rabbi in the synagogue, but someone else out in the field. That doesn't work. A person needs to be who they are wherever they are. Particularly when we talk about the values of Torah. The values of Torah aren't only when it's comfortable for me, when I'm giving my sermon, when I'm giving my lecture, then I'll be a rabbi. But otherwise, it's not for me. I remember one of the most telling stories from my rabbi, Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz, may he live and be well. He spoke about this so much in our classes when we learned by him in the Jerusalem Kollel. And one of the things that he said, well, he told us this, He said, you don't eat with your hands. So one of the students said, how do you eat pizza without your hands? Right? You can't. He says you eat it with a knife and fork. They said, but it just doesn't go. You don't eat pizza with your knife and fork. You have to eat pizza with your hands. He said, then don't eat pizza. If you can't find a dignified way, right? The idea is not that you should stop eating pizza, right? And it's not that you should start eating it with a knife and fork. But the idea is that there's a dignity that comes along with Torah righteousness. There's a proper way of conduct. And when you see, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in this class, but one of the students told me that he saw our Rabbi Berkowitz. He saw him in the florist. Right? You mentioned this? Hey, you saw him there for 20 minutes picking out flowers for his wife for Shabbos, right? Because when you see greatness, it's not just, oh, I got to do it. Let me just pick up the quick. No, he wants it to be done right. And the students who see that, you see the greatness, you see the holiness. Now, my grandfather never ended up writing those 30 books. He ended up only writing one of those books, and that was the one about his rabbi. He wrote about his rabbi, Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz. And after he was done writing that book, he said, I can't, after writing about such greatness, he couldn't write about the lowly philosophers. He just couldn't do it, right? So he had never ended up writing those other books. But that was his dream, to contrast the greatness of Torah versus the greatness of just wisdom. Torah is not about wisdom. Torah is about greatness. It's being people who are far greater because of the Torah that we study and the way that we act.
Well, you grew up with your grandfather. Saba was a very well-known, world-renowned big rabbi. For you, maybe it was like a normal, this is your grandfather. I think you probably always knew he wasn't the grandpa you talked about like sports and stuff with, maybe?
Yeah, we never spoke about golfing or sports cars or, wrestling. No, that never happened.
But he was like, to you, that was your grandfather. I remember when we got married, I'd always heard, Rabbi Wolbe or Shlomo Wolbe, and I was like, okay, cool. And then we got married, and the first time we went to his house, it's like weird. I don't know if it ever wore off. Like, thank God we had through the first 4 or 5 years we were married that he was still alive. The first 3 years that we lived in Israel, every week, every Motzei Shabbos, every Saturday night after Shabbos, we'd go. Us and a lot of the grandchildren would go over to his house, and it's like a family night at the Wolbes. And as much as you could hear about him or stories about him or learn things that he taught, when you're there and you see him and you see the way that he just sits, and the way he talks to his wife and the way he talks to his grandchildren and the way he eats and everything, it's a different very different dimension than just hearing their studying. I mean, thank God over the years, besides Saba, we had opportunity to have many big rabbis in our house or sleeping at our house, or right. And I could go to a lecture from one of them and gain a lot of insight or something, and like, oh, that's a great class, very nice, good, and it's very nice. But for me, it's so much more like cool and amazing to have them in your house and to see them and to serve them dinner and to see how they work and how they talk, really, like the way they answer the phone and talk to someone, or when they're like not on, right, not speaking to the crowd, and they're just sitting in our house having a barbecue at midnight, whatever we're having with them, and drinking a glass of wine and just sitting around talking, and you see they're like off, they're chill. That's, I think, way more impactful, because you learn like they're normal people, they're amazing, and you think they're another level and you can't relate to them, but you see them in regular everyday life, and it's interesting to interact with them like on that level. I don't know.
So our sages tell us, I'm reading here from my notes and I wasn't able to print them out, so I'm reading them off my phone. I'm not reading texts, okay? So serving a wise man is greater than learning with a wise man, because you learn from their ways. And that's what we're trying to the idea here is not just learning the words of Torah and the wisdom, but learning from the ways of those who possess them. They say about Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, who was the great headmaster, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir Yeshiva in Jerusalem. He learned in Poland by Rabbi Yerucham, my grandfather's rabbi as well. My grandfather also learned in the Mir. And he said that he learned by Rabbi Yerucham for 6 years. And he ate in his house every single Shabbos for 6 years. And Rabbi Yerucham never stopped talking words of Torah. He heard from Rabbi Yerucham Torah for 6 years. And he said he learned more with going with him to the pool to swim than he learned from all of those lectures, because he saw the way he conducted himself with modesty, with humility, with just the way you interact with other people is just so incredible. That's what we want to learn. We don't want to learn from the ways of our, it says Ma'aseh Avot Simam Labanim, that the ways that in which our sages acted, meaning Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Sarah, and Rebecca, and Rachel, and Leah, we don't just tell those stories because they're interesting stories. The whole book of Genesis. We're not interested in stories in Judaism. But what we want is to learn from their ways, because the way in which they acted is a sign for us how we should act. It's all lessons for us. The idea of these stories is not just the details of what happened. No, we want to get into the greatness of who they were. When we see a story of Abraham, that Abraham is visited by the Almighty, where the Almighty is coming to visit him after he had a circumcision and he's healing, and as we know, there's a mitzvah to visit the sick. God himself visited the sick. So what do? We visit the sick. But in the middle of this visit, there are 3 passers-by, the angels, who come to Abraham's tent. And Abraham says, excuse-moi, right? I got to take care of my guests, right? And God waits. And that's part, our sages tell us, we need to learn that what God wants is that don't be so holy. Don't be so holy and so righteous where you neglect your fellow man. God is going to wait for you. Take care of your fellow man. Serve the poor people. Help the less fortunate. God says, that's what I want you to do, just like Abraham. Just like Abraham said, God, hold on a second. I got to take care of these people. And God waited. God, by doing so, acknowledged this is the right way. So these are the types of things we learn throughout the Torah, of the lessons, not just the letter of the law. All of Judaism is not about letter of law. It's about the spirit that goes with it as well, the spirit of the law.
When we see, like, if they see a teacher on the street, they hide from the teacher. So I think some of my kids have like this teacher, a favorite teacher that they love, or they're excited to see. But usually they don't really want to see them out of school. And kids have this thing like against teacher. I think also as adults, we also have this like lack of interest in a teacher or someone like authority, someone tell us what to do, or someone like that's better than us. Like, because we think we know everything. And we just what are they gonna tell me that I don't already know? Or what are they gonna teach me? What are they gonna show me? And we like have this like, kind of attitude that we don't really need to learn from people. My sister Shoshana was just showing me these like plans on her computer. She's building a new house. So they went they're working on this for months and months and months, and they haven't even started building it, right? So they spoke to the contractor. They interviewed a bunch of contractors, and they spoke to the builder, an electrician, and this and that, and they're saying where to put this and where to put that, and then to all these appliance stores and tile stores and floor stores and paint, and they're figuring out like appliances, every single detail. There's like 1,000 things they're figuring out. And she's texting friends and relatives and calling them and asking them, what would you say, like what kind of, should I put in granite, or should I put in marble, or like, whatever, all the new stuff, whatever it's called, right, on your counter, and asking all these things. And what kind of tile cleans better, what kind of, right, a million questions before she does her house. And the builder's doing all this research, and right, you're not going to pick a guy who's like a nice guy you found in the Home Depot parking lot and hire him for $10 an hour to build your house. I don't know how your house is going to come out after that, right? So there's a lot of research and a lot of effort and a lot of things that we put into our things that we do in life, right? But when it comes to our actual lives, like we think like whatever, I got it, I'll figure it out, I'll wing it, right? So when we're deciding who we're gonna marry and figuring out how to raise kids and how to be a good wife and how to be a good mother and what kind of career and all these things, big decisions in our lives and smaller ones, we got it, we'll figure it out. We don't ask, we don't get advice because like we don't need it. We'll figure it out. I got this, right? So I think it's such a like stubborn thing on our part that we don't ask advice. We don't find a teacher, someone who can help us in our lives, because there's so much things that we don't know this stuff, right? If I knew before I got married what I know now, I'd be in a better place. Every marriage, every child, everything's different. But if I knew before I started kids or in the beginning what I know now, I was sitting with my siblings 2 weeks ago, our whole family, for the first time in a while, was getting together, which was really, really nice. And we were all the siblings, we were, joking around and having a good time. And, I was saying how, like, my sister was, yeah. So she's like, yeah, Zehava, she's the oldest. Our parents messed up with Zehava, because she's, they didn't really know what they were doing. And then by me, she's the seventh. She's the youngest. She's like, by me, it was perfect. They knew exactly what they're doing. They had to figure it out. I'm the perfect child. And then my brother goes, no. I'm the middle. Zehava, they messed up. Shoshana, the next one, right? But me, it was like perfection. They had it all figured out. They knew how to parent perfectly. I'm the perfect child. And then by Chevy, they already they were just tired and they're just like autopilot, just do your own thing, parent yourself, raise yourself. So it was, a funny family moment. We were like all teasing each other, but it's really true. Like a lot of parents, they say that the oldest child by an inheritance, the oldest son gets like a double portion. And I believe this is sourced that one of the reasons for that is that the parents kind of not messed up, but they, the first kid, there's some mistakes sometimes. So I think that all of us, whether it's before we become parents, before we become whatever it is we're doing in life, if we start a business and don't ask other people who are in the same situation, if you're opening a clothing shop and you don't do research, you don't ask other people who own clothing stores and have chains and bigger whatever, do your research, ask people. We're so we think we're smarter than everyone, or we don't want to come off as ignorant, so we don't ask. That's ignorant. Not asking is so stupid. It's so stubborn, because you have so much to learn from someone. What I knew 5 years ago, if I knew it now, what I could ask other people and learn from others, there's so much to learn from, Our parents, like everyone, as kids, like teenagers, like their parents don't know anything. They don't know anything, right? And then we wait till unfortunately, a lot of people wait till their parents are gone. And then they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much I wanted to know. There's so much I should have asked my parents. Or till it's too late, right? We don't ask advice from our parents. Our parents, if they raised you and hopefully didn't mess up too bad, maybe they know what they're doing. Maybe you could ask advice on that. And it's a good way to score points anyways. Call your parents, and if you can, right? For those of us who still have our parents and can ask our parents, you could call them and ask them advice, like what would you do in this situation? Get some good points there. But ask advice. Find someone who can, but I think we're specifically talking about finding that one person, right? It's important in life to find one person to really be your mentor, your guide, your wise person, your rabbi, to guide you with things in your life. You had two. Why don't you?
And so my rabbi of blessed memory, Rabbi Beryl Eisenstein, was born in Chicago and went to learn also in the Mir Yeshiva in Jerusalem, and he sort of recruited me to his yeshiva after my brother had learned by him, and I got very, very close to him, and he became my rabbi, and I seeked his guidance through my whole dating life, And then after we got married, we moved to Israel, and I continued to learn with him every Friday. I had a study partner with him. And every time I spoke to him on the phone, he'd ask me the same question. He would ask me, how's your wife? How's your children? Do you wake up for your kids at night? And I'd say, of course I do. I can't feed my kids, but I wake up and bring them to my wife. He says, oh, okay, so how are you doing? And like that was like the sort of the passage I needed to get through in order to get to for him to inquire about how I was doing. So I once asked him, I said, Rabbi, it's so interesting that every time I speak to you, you ask me about my wife, my kids. Do I wake up for my kids at night? And then you ask me how I'm doing. What's this pattern that you have? See, he says, because my students wake up for their kids at night. If you don't wake up for your kids at night, you're not my student. I don't want to talk to you. Right? And that was one of the many ways in which my rabbi always instilled this idea. You have a sense of responsibility to your wife. You can't feed your kids in the middle of the night. All right? Just can't. But I'm saying if there's a bottle that's needed that you can do, you can change the diaper. But there's some things that women can do that men cannot. There are many things that women can do that men cannot. Right? But that's one of them. Right? And that's just the reality. So at least be part of it. Wake up, bring your kid to your wife so that she can feed the child. Right? It was just something. And I remember that it was a Shabbos evening, Friday night. I was walking with my brother down the road. I lived about a mile and a half away from my rabbi's house. And we were taking a Friday night stroll, me and my brother. And I was passing by my rabbi's house. I said, you know what? Let's walk in. Let's say hello. So I knocked on the door. I came in, and my rabbi was not doing very well. Nobody knew. He didn't share that he had lung cancer. He was not a smoker. He was an anti-smoker. He had terrible, terrible lung cancer. He had terrible back pain. He always told me, I asked him, I said, Rabbi, what's going on? He says, I have some back pain. So I went home. This is not Shabbos. This is a different time. I went home, and I got my office chair. I had a good office chair, and I brought it to his house. I said, your back is hurting. Here, take a good office chair, which is comfortable, so you'll be more comfortable. And he used that. His family told me after he passed away that he used that till he was taken to the hospital. Right before he passed away, he was in that chair. And okay, so I came to his house that Friday night, and I see him. My rabbi slumped over his Gemara, over his Talmud, and I see he's very weak. He's very frail, and he wasn't an old man. He was 53 years old. So I said, Rebbe, how are you doing? This and that. And I can tell that he was not fully there. And he asks me a question that he's asked me so many times before. He says, where are you learning now? And I said, I'm learning by the Jerusalem Kollel by Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz. He says, Rabbi Berkowitz, he's a yashar. He's a straight man. He's a good man. Make him your rabbi. You can imagine I was shocked. What do you mean? You're my rabbi. Are you passing me off to somebody else? Right? And I asked him, I said as a joke in English, I said to him, Rabbi, are you going someplace? Sadly, 3 days later, he passed away. And from the funeral, I went straight to Rabbi Berkowitz and I said, Shalom Alecha, Rebbe. Hello, my rabbi. I told him what my rabbi had told me just 3 days earlier. And I said, you're now my rabbi. Right? Tag you're it, exactly. Whether you like it or not. The torch has been passed. And thank God. The idea that our rabbis tell us in the Mishnah, you must have a rabbi, someone you can consult with, someone you can learn from, someone you can ask your questions to. And your rabbi may not know all the answers, but you need to have someone that you accept their advice, whether it's nice or it's not so nice. That someone that will tell it to you straight. And I'll tell you, my rabbi, I have a great privilege of speaking to my rabbi every week. I call him in Israel, and I talk to him every week. And I ask him for advice on many things. On family issues, whether it's dealing with any of our children, whether it's communal issues, whether it's, organizational things, talking about, how to change the world, right? All of these ideas, I talk to him, and sometimes I have certain ideas, and he'll tell me absolutely not. And sometimes he'll have ideas, and I'm not so comfortable with them, but I accept them. You need to have a rabbi. You need to have someone who gives you that guidance and who shows you a path of how to live life, not only to learn and to get my rabbinic ordination from, right, but someone who will show in very real ways how to live a life.
I think when you find a rabbi, what Rabbi Rivero told you when he found Rabbi Berkowitz, he said he's a straight man, he's a good person to right? So you need to find your one person, your hopefully you have one or two or three throughout your life, but you're not like in a child in school, you graduate pre-K, you can move on to next year, first, second, right? You keep having new teachers. We want to have in life one person who's your guide, who's your teacher. You're saying who'll hold your feet to the fire, who will be honest, and we're very subjective about ourselves. So someone who can tell you from the outside, discuss your strengths and your flaws, and help you work through things that you have, and talk to you, right? So it's important to find someone. You really need to look around and find someone that you really connect to and you appreciate, and they make you a better person, right? You're not looking for someone who's just gonna like say that everything's good, everything's, whatever you're doing, you're good, you're doing great, right? That's what we all want today, right? Everyone's just like positive reinforcement, you're doing great, everything's perfect, right? No, in life, if you want to become a better person or the best version of yourself, you need someone who's gonna bring you up. So same as you wouldn't go to a doctor if you have a serious illness, God forbid, and he'll tell you, oh, you have this and you need to do this and this and that, and say, okay, I'm gonna find someone else. Like, let me just find someone else who just, or like go to a therapist who just says like, yeah, it's because your mom did this and this and this, and your dad, da da da, and you're just doing great, right? Of course you need that also, and there might be, but you need someone who's gonna say, these are your issues, let's work on it, right? So you want to find someone, a rabbi, who's gonna tell you straight up, like nicely but lovingly but nicely, like help you work through your things, and to help you grow and become your best you. But I'm saying, so you have to find the right person, and once you find that person, you're not shopping around like, oh wait, he said something I don't like, I'm gonna find someone else now. If you have someone that you really found, someone that you trust and respect, like you were saying with Rabbi Berkowitz, if he's your man, right? So you ask him advice, and there have been times that he says, and sometimes I join that call and I listen in, or I ask my questions. I take over Aryeh's time sometimes, right? Because I also need that, that person. So he'll tell you or us things that sometimes aren't so comfortable, but we have to, and there have been times also, it doesn't mean you have to follow blindly. There can be times that you think maybe they're not understanding a full picture, or maybe don't get this specific, thing, but that doesn't mean you just disagree with them. That means you say, you can work it through and say, I don't understand, help me understand, but respectfully work through the issue and try to come to understand. Maybe he'll agree with you, but maybe not. And maybe you need to, realize that you have this blind spot, or you're not seeing something, and you're just, I think that he's shown us so many times, there's been so many examples of times that he's shown us things that we like, a lot of times something in your gut, you really know that, whatever, but you need somebody else to really remove those filters that you put on so that you could see the truth. And it's good to have that person in your life.
Right. So it's funny. My grandfather, I would many times would daven with him in the morning, and I would, walking home from shul in the morning, I would offer to my grandfather. I would offer to carry his tefillin for him, and he would never let me. There are other times, for example, my grandfather, there were many steps leading to his house. He was either going up or going down, whatever street he came from. My grandfather never held on to the banister. Okay. Shabbos, I would be by my grandfather for Shabbos. He would never let me help him set up the table, right? To add the extra leaves to the table. He would never let me set up the table. And I was always wondering, my grandfather never asked someone to pass something to him, right? He would get up and get it himself. He would never ask someone to pass it. And then I realized there was a theme of what my grandfather was trying to teach me and teach all of those around him, to be independent, to not rely on other people for things. It was a very subtle but important message that he wouldn't explicitly tell us. My grandfather never said things direct, right? Because sometimes if you tell someone something direct, they push back against it. I'll give you an example. I remember this. So in yeshiva days, many times me, my brothers, my cousins, we would all sleep at my grandparents' house. And my grandparents had a very, very small house. Right? So it was 2 bedrooms. My grandparents were in one, and we were in the other bedroom. And it was such a small bedroom, we had these like little mattresses all like lined up in the room. And all of us were from the United States, and we would all be there for the summer. And so one morning we were planning a trip. One evening we were planning a trip for the next morning to go out some hike someplace up north. And we asked our grandfather if he could wake us up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30 in the morning. My grandfather was up already. Now typically there's no yeshiva during the summer month of break, and we would sleep till 9 o'clock, 9:30. Sleep a little late. There's no yeshiva, and my grandfather wouldn't tell us directly anything. My grandfather did his thing, and we did our thing. So when we asked him to wake us up early in the morning, he says, "Oi, in middle of the night, right? Right? Wake you up." And that was his way of teaching us that little lesson. Like, you guys are just, and with the cutest humor my grandfather had. But we learned from that something. We all learned from that something, right? And that was many things that we learned constantly from my grandfather. But one of them specifically was how to say something to someone else in a way that was, you got the message across, but in a way that wasn't attacking the person, a way that wasn't harming that person, insulting that person, or making them feel bad about themselves. These are all things that my grandfather was teaching us, right, throughout all the years that we had the great privilege of living in their house. So one of the things Zehava was mentioning is to have a teacher and not to go rabbi shopping, not to go teacher shopping. Now, I will tell you, though, one caveat to that is that you can have different rabbis for different things. For example, right, you can have a rabbi that's local, that you can ask your halachic questions to. What do? I use my meat spoon in my milk, in my cereal. What should I do? Or I put my.
It's fine by that.
Right. Or you use your milchik spoon to mix your hot soup. Not good. Right. But either way, so that's you have to have a rabbi, and you can ask practical questions. And I want you to know something, that anyone who is observant of kosher or is trying to observe kosher, get a rabbi on speed dial. I cannot tell you how many text messages I get a day of people sending me, "Rabbi, is this kosher symbol okay? Is this recommended? Is this acceptable? I can't find the kosher symbol on this. Does it need a kosher symbol?" Right? I just had someone yesterday. He sent me a picture of some vegetable. I don't even know what it was called, but he asked me, "Does this need to have a kosher symbol? I can't find a kosher." They're not going to print a kosher symbol on the vegetable. There's no need for it. All you got to do is rinse it and enjoy it, right? But it's important to have a rabbi for that. Now, if I tried to call my rabbi in Israel to ask him these questions, it'd probably be either a waste of his time, but he doesn't have the time to deal with that kind. So if I have such a question and I don't know the answer, I have to have a rabbi that I ask, right? I don't trust myself on all halachic questions, right? It's another thing we can get into another time. A person needs to know We'll get into it another time, okay? But the idea is like this. There's also a rabbi that you need to ask for education, right? Educational questions for your children, right? It's something, sometimes it could be a pressing matter, right? Sometimes you need guidance. You need someone who you can ask the question to and talk out all the details. So you can have a rabbi in education. You can have a rabbi in finances. You can have someone who gives you advice in how to prioritize your spending, things like that. Again, we don't have to get into all the details, but the idea is to have someone you seek counsel from. It's so critically important for us to have that. But more than that is also to learn from their ways, to have someone who's your image of what it means. It says that a person should feel of their rabbi, of their teacher, as if they're an angel of God. Malach Hashem Tzvakot, right? An angel of God, right? That means that in their actions they should be pristine. They should be holy and dignified. It shouldn't just be that they're brilliant in Torah but act in a very inappropriate way. Okay, so it's an important thing to always remember. All right. You want to go ahead?
Sure. We as humans we respect different people, right? Everyone has say doctors, right? You give like a certain respect to, right? And you doctor, oh please, and you ask them advice, right? Or like athletes or celebrities, right? You want to know what they think about this product or what they say about, right? And we like look up them and try to get their advice. And a wealthy man, you offer VIP seating to like special people. And it's important also for us to treat rabbis and wise people, just to treat people with respect and to serve them. I know you were saying that his grandfather didn't want you to help him, but there is a very big a merit or whatever to trying to serving a rabbi, to serving like these people, and to being like to work with them, and to there's like they have like these like big brother mentorship programs, kind of like in schools or in communities, a lot of times like in certain neighborhoods that could use a little more of a positive role model. They'll do it. I know even like in my daughter's school, in the girls' high school in Houston, they have all the high school girls have like a mentor, which is like a married woman in the neighborhood, and they have like a partnership, and that person they spend time with, and they can ask them advice, and they go to their house and they'll help them out a little bit. The girls will help the woman out, like sit in her kitchen with her and help her make dinner or watch her kids with her. But I think they also do it. All the Israel seminaries in Israel, all the girls in seminary have like there's chesed girls. Chesed meaning like kindness, right? So they all the girls, it's like community service hours kind of thing. So like all the girls get matched up with a family, and they'll go to this house, and it's for them to an hour or two or whatever it is a week to help out, to go to a family and help take the little kids out so the mother can get some work done, or to help cook for Shabbos or whatever it is, right? And I think a big part of it's not just for for the girls to do chesed. Really, the partnership, the idea of it really is for the girls to be in that kind of, they pick people for the girls to go to often that are good mentors, good positive influences for these girls. So you go to their house and you're involved with them, and you watch how they interact with their husband, and you watch how they interact with their kids, and you watch how they cook and live and life and whatever it is that's going on. And it's more than just, again, like learning and things. You kind of, it's like an internship almost, and you can learn a lot, like any kind of internship in the business world, right? You follow someone, you learn, and so it's good to have someone like that at different ages, at different stages in life, to have different people. So that's kind of how they start kids, like on that, to always have someone who's a mentor, always have someone who like you look up to, always have someone who can give you that kind of advice that we all need. No one knows everything, so we all have things that we need to learn. So I think generally we all need to learn how to learn from other people and find wise people, but specifically to have that one person, that main person in our lives that are there for us for what we need.
Right, so our sages tell us that human beings are subjective, and we need someone who can give us objectivity, someone who can look from the outside. It's a theme that we've discussed many, many times, how we all have blind spots, right? I see what's behind you, but you see what's behind me, right? So it's a very interesting thing that we need counsel from someone else who can see our blind spots, who can talk to us about our weaknesses. But we need to have the humility to ask, right? I'll tell you a very interesting thing. I once had a mentor, a rabbi, that I would go to, but the rabbi always made me feel bad that I wasn't calling them enough, right? Why don't you call me? Why don't you talk, right? You know, it's like it's an amazing thing. It was very odd to me, and I let go of that relationship a little bit because, you know, my grandfather, if you didn't come to him, he wasn't going to get upset, right? He just has more time to learn what he wants to learn, right? You're missing out by not going, right? I'd be missing out if I didn't go to him. My rabbi now, you know, if I ever missed calling him on our scheduled time, which has happened sadly, a few times a year, that I'll forget or I'll be traveling and so on and so forth, and I usually let him know in advance if I wasn't, right? But I apologize. I'm so sorry, you know, I wasn't feeling well or something. He says, okay, I'm not wasting my time. And it's like I'm running after him. He's not running after me, right? And that's the way a healthy relationship with the rabbi should be. The rabbi should not be running after the student. The student should be running after the teacher, right? And that's, you understand, I've always been running after my teachers, right, to get the time to learn with them, to get the time to study with them. I once had someone tell me, it's not fear. This is when I was in Israel, right? It's not fear. You have all these rabbis you learn with, right? And it's true. I had study partners with many of my rabbis. I had a Shabbos afternoon. I had a study partner for 2 hours with one of my rabbis. On Friday, I had a study partner with one of my rabbis. And on Wednesday afternoon, I had a study partner. And he said, it's not fear. If I had a rabbi, I would also learn and grow. And I said, what do you mean? I said, why don't you have a rabbi? Right? He says, yeah, then they'll never. I said, did you ask? Did you ask? If you don't ask, of course the answer is going to be no. Right? So I said, if you'd like, I can ask for you. So I went to one of the rabbis. I said, do you want to learn with him? No problem. I'll get you some time. So I called up the rabbi. I said, you know, I know somebody who really wants to spend time with the rabbi. Would you have some time? He says, actually, on Friday afternoons, I give a class in a certain place, and I walk back to my house. It takes 45 minutes. He says, I have time. If they want, they could walk back with me those 45 minutes, uninterrupted. So I told that person, I said, here you go. You have 45 minutes to learn with the rabbi. He says, it's not so convenient. I'm like, then you're not serious. If you really want a rabbi to learn with, this is the time he's giving you, right? And the problem is we expect the rabbi to come to my house to visit with me when it's good for me, right? Between carpools that's not the way it works, right? One of the things the Mishnah is telling us here is that if we want to have a rabbi, we need to go after the rabbi. And the rabbi is going to ask you once. He's not going to ask you once. You'll ask the rabbi once, and you'll ask him twice. You ask him 3 times. You ask him 4 times. Eventually, he'll say, okay, fine. I can't get off the hook. No problem. I'll give you a half hour to learn together, right? That is the way we need to see it, is that it's our privilege. It's my privilege to learn with my rabbi. And it's the obligations on me to seek him out. He's not going to seek me out. That's not the way it works. I'll tell you an amazing story. One of my grandfather's prize students, I think it's undisputed that he's one of my grandfather's biggest students. So my grandfather had met him. He had heard a lot about him. And my grandfather invited him as a married man to come live in the yeshiva campus. So it's like, wow, it's a great opportunity to be in Rabbi Wolbe's yeshiva and to live, on the campus and to be close to him and to learn from him. So he did that. Okay. First month, my grandfather doesn't say anything to him. The second month, he's there, he's part of it. He hears the lectures like everybody else, but there's no relationship there. He's like wondering, like, what in the world is going on here? The second month, the third month, finally, after 6 months, he goes to my grandfather. He says, I don't understand. You invited me to come. You invited me to be part of your yeshiva, to be one of your students, right? But you don't even talk to me. He says, I'm supposed to go to you? right? And the idea was, and this I heard this from the student. He said, I learned in that second what it means to be a student. If you want to learn from someone who's greater than you, you have to seek them out. They're not going to seek you out. And that's the number one, right? If he wanted to learn from my grandfather, he's going to have to run to him and knock on his door and drive him crazy till he gets the time he needs. And when I left the Jerusalem Kollel, so I had 2 one-hour meetings with my rabbi every week. And when I left, there was a bunch of guys wanted to take those slots. They ended up being split up to 8 different guys for 15 minutes apiece. And I remember the guys were like, how did you ever get this time with Rebbe? And I said, I didn't give him a choice. I was like a terrorist, right? Standing at his door. Every time he walked out of his office, I was there. You got a few minutes, right? You got a few minutes? I drove him crazy, right? It's like I was terrorizing him, okay? I was like, didn't let him.
This is not good advice.
It's good advice.
No,
No, that's
bad
the way you
advice.
get a rabbi. That's the way you get a rabbi. And I'll tell you what, I built a very, very precious relationship with him that I think is mutual, by the way, right? That I'm very, very close with him because of that. I could have said, oh, he said no, it means no. Well, then he wouldn't be my rabbi. But to really be a student of someone, you have to pursue them. And you have to pursue them, not harassing him, not driving, right? But asking, begging for that time that we can learn together. And the time that we had together was unbelievable because that's the time that he got to know who I was also. And then years later, when we talk, my rabbi, and we ask advice, he says, that's not for you. That's not who you are. How does he know? Because we spent that quality time together. And he got to know who I was, who my wife was, right? And who our children are, right? Through all of these. So it's critically important that it's not just a rabbi. It's a nice thing. I hear a sermon, go home. That's not a rabbi, right? That's a motivational character, right? But that's not a rabbi. What it means to be a rabbi for someone is that someone who understands you, who can give you personalized guidance. Right?
I think that there's, what's the phrase? Like, what would what would Yashki do? What would Jay do? WWJD. So if you have a rabbi, a mentor, you need to ask yourself, like, what would so and so do? What would they do? And having that rabbi, having that teacher, having that mentor is someone that you could, when you're in your daily life or you're making a decision, you should ask them, and for obviously like try to get bigger advice. But once you start to learn and understand and learn the values that they're teaching you, then you can have that what would blank do? What would Rabbi whatever this do? So like we would say, what would Rabbi do? What would Rabbi Berkowitz say? Right? And if we think it's something that he would approve, then maybe it's right. And if it's something that he wouldn't, so maybe you get to the same way he gets to understand you understand him, and maybe it helps you understand yourself better.
And it's exactly the idea. Is you want to learn to think the way they think, right? The way it works in a yeshiva is that you would get a worksheet every day, which would give you sources of different, learn the Talmud, these 12 lines of Talmud, learn this commentary and that commentary and this commentary. What's the idea of this? Why should I learn all of these sources? Because what the rabbi is trying to do is teach you how to think. And then you learn their methodology. You learn how they look at the world in a Torah way. You learn how God thinks by studying Torah. That's the idea, is that we all have our things. We all have our blockages. But this is able to open them up for us so that we start thinking like a Torah Jew thinks. We start thinking like a rabbi thinks. We start thinking, hopefully, like God thinks. Okay? And that's what the mitzvahs are to put us in a channel of, right? Someone was just recently challenging me and asking, I don't remember where this was, is it moral, is it not moral? And I said, well, God says it's not. So who am I to argue with God, right? God didn't think so. He's the creator of heaven and earth. He thought that this wasn't moral, right? Because he wrote it in his Torah. And if he wrote it in his Torah, who am I to argue with him? Okay? So if I'm arguing with God, I think God is right. I think, right? Right? You understand? When I disagree with my rabbi, I don't disagree and get upset at my rabbi. I disagree and try to learn, what did my rabbi understand that I didn't? What does he see that I don't see? And then try to change the way I look at things to have the proper perspective. Okay, so it's greater than just having a rabbi. I like his sermons. Great lecture, rabbi. Have a good life. Right? That's not the idea of having a rabbi. The idea of having a rabbi is much more to get a deep understanding as to how they live their lives, how they think. The Talmud says that you see from the light conversation, from the chatter of great holy people, right? More than there's Torah study, right? That is Torah study. To see how they schmooze, to see how they chat, the dignified way in which they respect other people, right? It really is. It's very telling. I mentioned once about Rabbi, the one from right. So I mentioned this once in one of the classes about my father-in-law's rabbi. Right? He lived in a little shack. It was such a small shack. But when we went into his house, when we went to visit him, the joy, he was beaming with joy, with happiness, but you see a person of greatness, right? Not because he had things, not because he had money, not because he had possessions, not because of none of that. You saw how he greeted a human being with unbelievable joy. You saw how he treated his wife with unbelievable joy and with love, right? You learn from their ways, right? And that is really the key of this whole 10th way, right? Our sages tell us to learn about life, you need a mentor, someone to guide you on a rational and consistent path. Right? Independence is human nature, but if you don't moderate it, it will stand in the way of your growth. Okay? We all want to be independent. I don't want anyone telling me what to do. I don't want anyone telling me how to do, right? But we need that guidance. We need to have someone we need to moderate that, right? We need a little bit of guidance, and we need to have that humility that will allow us to accept it so that we can grow and we can become greater than who we are. Be a student of truth. The most destructive disease is ignorance, not being connected with reality. Okay? We, many times, you think about politics. Today's a very, very polarized world where you have people who love the senator, hate the senator, love the governor, hate the governor, love the president, hate the president, love the prime minister, hate the prime minister. I mean, you have it all over the world. You have this idea of, this polarized perspective of but how many people actually sit through and learn the ideas, learn the concepts, learn what it means to be a Democrat, learn what it means to be a Republican, learn what it means to be pro-abortion, what it means to be pro-life, etc., etc. All of these things are things that we need to educate ourselves in independently, or have someone you can learn it with, and not just leave it to our ignorance, leave it to just the way I feel. Let's learn through the topics. So when you have this idea today, there's no excuse for us not to know things, because everything today you can find on the internet. You can talk to Google, and Google will tell you everything you need to know about every topic in the world, even how to assemble.
Google's not a good rabbi.
Google's not a good rabbi. It's true, but I'm saying in every area of life. You're right, but in every area of life, there are tremendous resources today that a person can utilize, right? And there's, it's like we're putting out a video today from the Torch Minute on life hacks, right? It really is an incredible video, but there is a life hack in Judaism. You have to watch it on Torch Minute, right, to see it at Instagram. But the idea here is that there's what?
Shameless little plug.
Yeah, but you have online today. We have such unbelievable resources. Let's be a student of wisdom, not leave ourselves ignorant. Well, we talk about concepts, but then we don't even know what they mean. All right, and that's the world we're living in today. Is you have many people who are just sticking to a banner because it makes them feel good, but not because they really agree with the principles. Get in touch with those who understand life and pump them for information. What's that?
Oh.
All right, and pump them for information. If you find someone who is great, I'll give you an example. I have a friend of mine who told me that he became an avid student of what's the guy who does the finances. No, the guy he does this
Ramsey.
Ramsey. And he says, I don't miss a single one of his programs. I love it. It teaches me how to balance my checkbook, and it teaches me this, and it teaches me how to budget, and all of these things. That's great. So he has someone he could learn from, right? We all need little educators wherever we go throughout life. Find someone who's a professional in medicine, right? You can ask for a second opinion. That's fine. You can always ask for a second opinion, but have someone that you accept from, someone that you totally submit yourself to their wisdom and learn from them. Get all you can out of them. Okay? Just a few of the things to find a teacher. Find a teacher now, right? Here are a few ideas to get you started. What does it mean to be a good person? Right? Ponder that idea. Ask someone, what does it mean to be a good person? How can I be kind to others without being taken advantage of? Right? Think about that. If I'm going to be helping other people, how do I ensure that I'm not going to be taken advantage of? How can I control my anger? What is the key to greatness? How can I maximize my time? What makes a marriage successful? How do I use my full potential? How do I break out of my laziness? These are all very great questions that we need to find a rabbi or a mentor to give us the answers to. Right now, you can do your own research and you can learn. But in Judaism, we find that the books, all of the libraries in the world won't make you a great man. They'll make you a wise man. They won't make you a great man. You want to be a great man? Connect yourself to a teacher. Connect yourself to someone who's holy and special, someone who's pious, someone who's kind, someone who's it really is, it's an amazing world that we're living in with unbelievable opportunities, limitless opportunities. And that's really the essence of way number 10, is for us to really undertake this this goal of having a teacher. What do you want to add something?
Nope. I think, well, just thinking, Kneel Charav, which the Talmud, it's in Pirkei Avos also, right? That says that you should acquire for yourself a rabbi and buy for yourself a friend. Well, I guess that would lead us to next week's class, so we could end with that because that connects the two. You're supposed to acquire a rabbi and buy yourself a friend. So check in next week to find out what that means.
Right. So the very basic idea is that you need to. It says aseh l'charav, make for yourself a rabbi, and the way you make for yourself is you need to give in of yourself to your rabbi, right? To acquire wisdom from him. Knei l'charav is more of an acquisition, right? And we'll talk about that, like you said, next week. I'm very excited about that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Any questions for our friends on Facebook? Thank you so much for joining us. I would like to say shalom from Texas, but sadly we're in New Jersey. I mean, it's nice. It's nice to be with family.
Terrible.
It's not so terrible. That's true. But we miss you all in Texas. So shalom to those of you on Facebook. Thank you for joining us, and please like and share these videos. We look forward to seeing you next week